My dedication in the book for Lily's Red Shoes of Courage is to all the little girls out there who step into their courage, to discover their empathy, to stand up for themselves and for others, and for all of the women in their lives who showed them how. For me, there are two particular women that were in the forefront of my mind when I wrote the book. One, of course, is my grandmother, who was bullied as a child. She was a poor farmer, one of 17 children. The book Lily's Red Shoes of Courage tells her story about how she was made fun of because she didn't have fancy shoes. She wore tattered hand-me-down clothes, and her experience with bullying and how she tried to navigate her way through that. And the second woman is Rena Ferber-Finder, who I had the amazing privilege of interviewing for my book, Put on Your Big Girl Shoes. Rena is a Holocaust survivor from Schindler's List. And Rena survived because one person, Oskar Schindler, was unable to close his eyes and pretend that he didn't see what was happening. And while Oskar Schindler was not a good man by many other standards, he was a profiteer from the war, he was a womanizer, he was a liar, he was just not a good person in many ways. Oskar Schindler was an upstander, even if just for one moment. He took one opportunity to find a way to save the lives of 1,200 people. And why? Because he was no longer able to pretend that he didn't see what was happening. He stepped into his courage and found his shared humanity with the people who were suffering. I didn't know what to expect when I interviewed Rena. I'd never interviewed a Holocaust survivor, and certainly not somebody who was in the concentration camps at such a young age. And I knew that she had opened up herself to share this story, and I wondered why. Why she would put herself through all of that, and what she would do with those stories that were now resurfaced in her mind. And Rena's answer to me has remained at the core of my being, at the forefront of my mind, in everything that I do going forward from that day. Rena's words to me changed me. She put her arms around me, she hugged me, and she said, "My stories now will have life in you because you have become an eyewitness. And what you do with this information will now be your responsibility." I didn't understand it at the time, and I flew back home to Cleveland, but I couldn't re-engage in my life. I tried to go back to work. I tried to listen to the stories that people were telling me about my neighbors, about the funny things that had been happening while I was gone. But I felt so disconnected from the everyday, mundane world. I felt like I couldn't let go of and couldn't move past the stories that I had just heard. I didn't understand what being an eyewitness meant, because in my mind, an eyewitness was somebody who had actually seen, somebody who was present, somebody who observed. But only through the next several weeks of rewatching the interviews and watching the video did it occur to me what Rena really meant. I was seeing the images through Rena's eyes. While I may have been in the company of an 80-some-year-old woman, I was also present with the 10-year-old little girl who was afraid, who now no longer was a person. She was a number. I realized that being an eyewitness was about taking in and absorbing her humanity and connecting it to mine. The overarching message from Rena was about the danger of being a bystander and the true power that we all have in stepping into our empathy, seeing the world through the lens of somebody else, understanding their experiences, pausing long enough to say, I want to understand, I want to experience, I want to know. And then having the courage to stand up, to become an upstander, somebody who doesn't actively or passively participate in hate, bigotry, racism, sexism. Somebody who's willing to stand up to say, even if this isn't happening to me, it is happening to you. And because we have a shared humanity, it's happening to me. That's the truest power of our empathy. That's the message from Rena. And I took that message to heart. And I thought about, how do we change? How do we find the courage to step into those difficult conversations, to step into experiencing and imagining ourselves in somebody else's shoes? How do we do that? And at the end of the day, the message was very clear. It's about the power of empathy. It's about the power of wanting to know and being willing to know and having the courage to know. Rena's story changed me at the core. And my commitment to Rena was that going forward, in honoring her and her courage and sharing her message with me, was that I would carry forward her message of the danger of being a bystander and the truest, most authentic power that we can harness, which is to become an upstander. And so with both of those women and their stories in my head, I wrote Lily's Red Shoes of Courage, in the hopes that it will inspire our really young children, particularly our little girls, to find a way to step into their courage, to stand up for themselves and for others.